Yesterday, I talked about coloring outside the lines in your work life. Today, we're going to think about the constituent parts that made up the framework and talk about putting the pieces together, maybe putting them together in a new way. So, stick around for today's episode. I'm John Paulus. Thanks for joining me on Life's Potluck Buffet. The title card of today's episode has deconstructed the Dutch oven or casserole of Life's Potluck Buffet. Also, I've broken down the words of Life's Potluck Buffet into their constituent letters and then grouped the letters together based on how many times each occurs. And there are, in case you're counting, there's one B, one C, two E's, three F's, one I, one K, two L's, one O, one P, one S, two T's, and two U's. Oh, and an apostrophe. Let's now ask the cards about how to put the pieces together. So whatever you're thinking about, into a new arrangement. 2024 is all about new arrangements. And that means that if you're talking about a framework, thinking about that framework in a new way. Yesterday we talked about thinking about outside of the framework, how to work outside of the framework. We talked about Alina Kojokaru, the freelance ballerina who's operating outside of the framework of a ballet company and outside of the strictures of that and the structure of that and flourishing. So today, we're going to pick apart the elements of the framework. That's what we're going to think about, how to take apart those structures and understand the elements of them, and then rearrange them into a new configuration. I talked a lot about Salvador Dali because of Salvador Dali's important role in the Life's Potluck Buffet, especially his January 1957 appearance on What's My Line. But I think in a certain way, an artist like Pablo Picasso represents this ability to rearrange structures into new forms. I think that that's what we're thinking of here is in a work life way, how to kind of be a Picasso of your work life rather than the Dali of your work life. And really, I think ultimately the difference between the Dali work style and the Picasso work style in terms of what we've been talking about is that the Dali work style has a kind of way of taking what is familiar and defamiliarizing it, and kind of changing it in a surreal way and making it so that it's not familiar, or well, it's surreal, and so like that's the Dali style. The Picasso style is taking the parts and rearranging them into a new order that clashes with the previous order. So when we're talking about the relationship between you and the structures of the work that you do and the structures of the organizations that you're involved in, the Dali way is that kind of thing we were talking about yesterday, the coloring outside of the lines, creating a new image by doing something unexpected with the current image. With the Picasso style that we're talking about today, it's the rearranging of the parts so that it's defamiliarized and so that there's a new way of approaching what was familiar before, but now there's that break from what was familiar, and it's been defamiliarized in a different way by the rearrangement of parts. Okay, so let's ask the cards what can help us talk about this today. and I'm going to give it three casual shuffles, and then I'm going to cut the deck, and I am going to do one last shuffle. Not so casual shuffle, the formal shuffle. All right, and then we're going to choose a card based on what is sticking out. Oh, I see one right. Well, that's going to be hard to get to. Oh, I lost it. The hardest part sometimes is figuring out what is this? Where's the gap? All right, here it is. It's card 37. The third time is the charm. Now, you'll remember card 37, if you're an avid listener of Life's Potluck Buffet, that this is an exercise that I created years ago where you say three things that you want to do for yourself or others, and then you look at the third thing and see what that was. So I think in our case, we already have two elements. We have the Picasso and then the Dali element. And since I'm in the position to have a third element, since we talked about the third time as a charm, I'm gonna say that in order to understand the relationship between old structures and new structures that we want to think about, how to rearrange them into a new reality, I think that the person we need to think of who came to mind is the third element here is Frida Kahlo. And as an artist, Frida Kahlo's works, I'm thinking specifically about her magical realism approach, where the look of something might be, for the most part, realistic, but there are fantastical elements or magical elements that are added to it and that are part of it that move it to a new realm. So I think that's a really good analogy for recreating new structures in a work, an area of work, is to think about rearranging them so there's they look recognizable, but to do that in a way that there's one element that is totally fresh and new and unexpected. So that element of unexpected, it's adding one element of the unexpected rather than the whole thing be the unexpected. That's more, I think, the work of, the surrealist work, where everything is turned on its head in a certain way and unexpected. Where magical realism, there's a moment of unexpected that happens. And so this is the way to put the pieces back together of an organization or of the way of working that you're thinking about, or an area of work, is to do things to put them back together so that they would be recognizable as that area of work. But make one important element new, fresh, completely different, and start from there. So give that a shot. And whatever you do and whatever you're thinking about doing, put everything back together so that it looks like it previously did. Except for one thing, add an element of surprise or the unexpected to that and see what you have. So that's our approach today for putting the pieces back together. We're going to put things back together and they're going to look kind of like they did before, except there's going to be one surprise thing. I think of the works of Gabriel Garcia Marquez as well, that magical realism, and that idea of, all of a sudden there are butterflies flying out of whatever, that's like, there's no way that normally there would be a flock of butterflies. What do you call a group of butterflies? That's a good question. If you know that, put that in the comments. I'll try to remember to look it up. So, all of a sudden, you're in a kind of sort of regular scene in in a house, and there's, just like a million butterflies all of a sudden. So adding that element of surprise, unexpected, and completely magical realism. That is the way to put pieces back together, but have something totally new when you're finished.